Imagine yourself being taken, bound, gagged, and held captive unexpectedly and arbitrarily. Imagine facing imminent death, not being able to move in the dark, alone. Imagine not knowing the depths of your captor's sadistic depravity. What would you do? What could you do? Stockholm Syndrome. How can it be? How can a hostage grow positive feelings towards their captor, their tormentor? But is it even real? Does Stockholm Syndrome really exist? The American Psychiatric Association's classification system for psychological disorders, the DSM-5, does not list Stockholm Syndrome as a psychological disorder. In popular culture and as a media soundbite, it is commonly used. There are, however, numerous examples of how, especially, although not necessarily, after long periods in captivity, upon release captives have defended their captors to authorities and even adopted the political ideologies of their captors. The term Stockholm Syndrome was coined in 1973 after 4 hostages were taken and held for 6 days during a bank raid in Stockholm, Sweden. In 1998, aged 10, Natascha Kamputsch walked to school alone for the first time. But that would be the last time she would walk to school at all. Waiting next to the van with its side door open was Wolfgang Pricklepil. As she walked past Pricklepil, he grabbed her and threw her in the back. Natascha spent the next 8 years living in a concrete dungeon beneath Pricklepil's house until she ingeniously engineered her escape. Running through the streets malnourished and bruised from her regular beatings, crying out for help. People thought she was just seeking attention or high on drugs, until they remembered the posters from 8 years previously.
Strasshof, a prosperous suburb of Vienna. Natascha Kamputsch was imprisoned here for 8.5 years. This is her story.
What I've learned about people is this: no one is infallible, and anyone can find themselves in a position where they lose control of their lives. That's true for the kidnapper, and it's true for me. From the moment I was kidnapped, I still had control of my thoughts, but I couldn't do anything about the world outside. And the perpetrator had blown a couple of fuses in his head, and he couldn't control his life either, or he wouldn't have done what he did. I just sat there and counted to myself up to 21 seconds, and then to 60, and on, so I knew roughly how long I had been there. But at some point I lost track. That first day he brought me a mattress. It was just 5 centimeters thick and made of foam rubber. I only had the same blue blanket to cover me, and I had to use my jacket as a pillow. I wanted to keep my dress on, day and night. I didn't want to give up anything or reveal anything about myself. He'd taken away my school bag, and he burned my shoes in the first few days. And then he installed an intercom system so I could communicate with him. I couldn't tell if it was day or night because my inner clock had gone haywire.
Years later, the entrance to Natascha's cell is discovered in the garage beneath a disguised trapdoor. Down below, a heavy cupboard and tires must be shoved aside. They reveal a safe, 70 centimeters high, screwed flush with the wall. Behind that, the half-meter thick wall has been hollowed out. To get in, you had to crawl backwards through the hole and then close a 150-kilo steel and concrete door behind you. Finally, you turned left to open the double wooden doors and stepped down into a 5-square-meter cell.
It probably took him an hour or so to open the cell. If he was working fast or he hadn't locked everything, it was a bit less. The effort was enormous, pushing everything aside and opening everything up. If anything had happened to him, or he had been taken ill, he'd never have got it open. I would have been sealed up like an Egyptian pharaoh, buried alive, dead and mummified. Later on, he installed a timer. The lights went on at a particular time, and then it went dark, like in a prison, where the lights go off at 8 p.m. Every drop of water meant more mold. It was humid and wet in the little room, and there were all kinds of insects there. It smelled musty. It was very cold and damp, really disgusting.
Kalt, feucht, ekelhaft. Diese Einbauventilatoren.
And the ventilator was a kind of torture.
Folter.
It was very loud. And when it rotated for a long time and became hot, the blades began to melt. And then it didn't just make that droning noise, but another annoying sound.
Tock, 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 tock. Und dann wieder das normale Ventilatorengeräusch und wieder tock, 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 tock.
That went on until the fan was broken. I began to get a sense for when he was coming. I would become very nervous. And then I'd hear the sounds of him unscrewing the safe and opening the concrete door. Lots of pounding noises. I'd sense it in advance somehow. And I'd get palpitations. My whole body would go into knots. My stomach would twist into knots. I'd break out in a cold sweat and I'd feel really queasy. He didn't want me to cry, and each time I did, he rubbed my tears into my face with the back of his hand. Or he took me by the throat and dragged me, joking me, to the bathroom, where he held my face over the sink so I couldn't cry anymore. He wouldn't let me cry because he was afraid the hydrochloric acid in my tears would corrode his towels. He always forced me to look him straight in the eye or look down at the ground in a very submissive way. Of course, I couldn't do that for long, because I won't be forced to do anything against my will. And of course, he got back at me because of that. He kept telling me I'm useless and worthless, and that I'll never have a chance to escape. He just liked having someone to dominate. And the more I resisted and answered back, the more satisfying it was for him to put me down and dominate me, to boost his own self-esteem. He despised people. He hated his neighbors, although he was nice to them. He hated his surroundings and society, though he pretended to be a conformist.
Slowly, Natascha gained Prickler Pill's trust, and he began taking her out of the dungeon on day trips, even using her as manual labour on a flat he was renovating. Seizing her chance one day, she ran for her life from the man who told her he was an Egyptian god. Realising he must soon be arrested, Prickler Pill lay down on a train track and waited.
Natascha Kamputsch becomes a media star overnight, darling of the world's press. The missed tip-off from the police dog handler causes a political storm. There's talk of cover-ups, mistakes, half-truths. Austria's scandal-racked government resigns 2 years later.
During interviews, Natascha told how she had cried after hearing Pricklepil was dead. She said she felt sorry for him and was grateful for the small pleasures given to her by the man who over the years had become her new family. She began to receive hate mail and accusations of Stockholm Syndrome as people turned on her, and still she kept a photo of Pricklepil in her wallet. Since her escape, Natascha has written a memoir of her ordeal and has hosted her own TV chat show. She now owns and maintains the house under which she was held captive for 8 years. She has not halted the property, except that she has filled in the cellar.
In many people, I trigger some kind of unconscious aggression. Maybe the whole crime and what happened to me triggers aggression, and I'm the only one they can still reach, and so it all lands on me. Right from the start, I said I'm not a victim, because I knew that if I present myself as a victim and show everyone how terrible it was, they'd never accept me as a normal person again. They'd say, you've debased yourself so far. What do you think you're doing here? Go back where you came from. Go back down to your filthy swamp. That's how most people are. That's how they think. I just want people to treat me normally. I deserve a chance like anyone else. I think people should be glad I halfway survived all this.
Stockholm Syndrome. Is it a psychological disorder or a survival strategy? A codependent ego defense in a catastrophic situation, or a convenient excuse? Or does it even exist at all?